Hi everyone, before watching the video, please give me a like and subscribe. Thank you very much. I am the disgraced second male lead of a story that has already reached its conclusion. After failing my mission to win the heart of the female lead, I have lost all desire to remain here. I only want to die, hoping for a swift return to my original world. Yet, as soon as they realized I had truly lost my will to live, those who once despised and betrayed me began crawling back, one by one, to beg for my forgiveness. They pleaded with me not to die, not to leave them like this. But I had long since stopped needing them. My mission was to save the obsessive female lead, Serafina, from her tragic fate. I wanted to change her, to prevent her from committing suicide after being rejected by the protagonist, Ethan. But in the end, she still abandoned our engagement party the moment Ethan called. After the guests vanished, I climbed alone to the rooftop of the Sterling Group headquarters. My mind raced as I confirmed with the system. As long as this body is destroyed, I can go home, right? Once the system gave its affirmation, I began to move toward the ledge. I had barely taken 2 steps when a cold laugh echoed behind me. I turned around to see a familiar face, Arya. She was my foster sister. When she was 7, I found her in a junkyard. We relied on each other for survival until she turned 14, when her biological parents, billionaires, finally tracked her down and brought her home. When we met again years later, she had become one of Ethan's most devoted admirers. The sacrifices I made, working 3 jobs at once just to put her through school, were met only with a brief flicker of emotion when we first reunited. But once she discovered I was the devious, jealous villain the rumors claimed I was, Arya's warmth turned to mockery and suspicion. Today, at my engagement party with Serafina, news broke that Ethan had been kidnapped. The report swept the guests away like a tidal wave, including my own fiancé. Before she left, Serafina grabbed me by the collar, her eyes like shards of ice. "You'd better hope you had nothing to do with this," she hissed. Then, she turned her back on me without a second thought. That was the 100th time since I transmigrated into this book. The 100th time she chose Ethan over me. The system officially declared my mission a failure. An obsessive woman will always be obsessive. This so-called salvation was nothing more than the arrogant delusion of the system and myself. Thinking of this, a mocking smile tugged at my lips. I looked at Arya standing before me, and for the first time, there was not a trace of warmth left in my eyes. "I don't know why you're still here, but you'd best stay out of my business," I said, a slow, frigid smirk spreading across my face. "Wait much longer, and you'll miss your chance to curry favor with your precious god. After all, this so-called kidnapping is nothing but a staged farce by Ethan and the Sterling clan. Its only purpose was to sabotage my wedding to Serafina today." I paused, my voice dripping with venom. "Once they've all gathered to play their parts, Ethan will miraculously appear. Mark my words." Perhaps because she had never been subjected to such coldness from me, Arya froze, her mouth hanging open as she struggled to find words. But I had already turned my back, refusing to spare her another glance. Now that the mission had collapsed, I had no reason to remain in this world. The only thing worth celebrating was that the system had witnessed my genuine effort to fulfill the task. It had granted me a penalty waiver. As long as I exited this reality within the allotted time frame, I wouldn't be erased from existence. However, back in my original world, my real body was already failing due to a terminal illness. Thinking of my mother's heartbroken, tender gaze from before I transmigrated, I gritted my teeth, and my pace toward the ledge quickened. "Caleb, what are you doing?" As I neared the precipice, Arya's voice grew frantic. She followed close behind, her initial contempt giving way to a flicker of panic. "What kind of stunt is this now? Playing the martyr? Seeking death? Haven't you realized yet that this trick won't work on Serafina? Besides, even if you die right here, it won't make you half the man Ethan is." Arya's voice cut off abruptly. From her vantage point, she saw the unthinkable. I didn't hesitate. I vaulted over the railing and plummeted toward the glittering lights of the city below. The world rushed upward in a blur. The night wind screamed past me, cutting into my skin like icy blades. But the pain couldn't dampen the surge of euphoria in my chest. I'm going home, back to my parents' embrace, back to the warmth of real friends, leaving all the grievances of these past years behind. Just a little longer, just a little more. I closed my eyes. The next second, the sensation of falling was violently interrupted. My arm was jerked upward with a sickening force. The searing pain of straining muscles dragged me back to reality. I opened my eyes to see Arya, one hand white-knuckled around the railing, the other gripping me with a desperate, iron strength. "Let go," I said, my voice cold and hollow. Arya gritted her teeth, her face contorted. Whether from the physical strain or something else, I couldn't tell. Her eyes were bloodshot, shimmering with unshed tears. "Caleb, fine, you win. You're a brilliant actor, but doing this won't change anything." "Serafina, she..." "Let go," I snarled. I didn't want to hear that name ever again. I began to thrash violently. To catch me, Arya had already leaned half her body over the edge. My struggling only made her position more precarious, her grip slipping as we both teetered on the brink of the abyss. We both teetered on the edge of the railing, suspended in a precarious balance where any sudden movement could send us both plummeting into the void. "Stop moving! We're really going to fall!" Arya screamed in a panic. Seeing that I remained completely indifferent to her warning, she took a shaky breath, her voice softening into a desperate plea. "I won't just watch you die. If you do this, I'm going down with you. Do you really have the heart to let me die with you?" "Caleb, big brother." That intimate address, laced with a trace of the old coquettishness she used to have, struck a chord. It was the way she spoke back when she lived in my house, back when we were all each other had in the world. In those days, I considered Arya my only family, and I spoiled her beyond measure. Because of that, she had grown accustomed to manipulating me with her charms. I looked up, meeting her gaze. Her eyes were bright, like shimmering stars. Arya watched me intently. Beneath her forced composure, there was a flicker of expectation. She was waiting for my usual reaction, waiting for me to soften, to yield. The sheer narcissism of it made me want to laugh. And so I did. I laughed right in her face. Looking her straight in the eyes, I enunciated every word with icy clarity, "Whether you live or die." "What does that have to do with me?" In an instant, Arya's face turned ashen. She looked as though she couldn't process my answer, staring at me in a daze so profound that her grip actually began to loosen. With every passing second, a spark of hope flared in my chest. Just as her fingers were about to let go completely, a chorus of horrified screams erupted from below. The chaotic sounds of a rescue team scrambled toward the roof. Arya snapped back to reality. Her hand tightened into a vice-like grip, seizing me once more as if she had just woken from a nightmare. She stared at her own hand, the one that had nearly let go, with a look of agonizing complexity in her eyes. Eventually, we were both hauled back over the ledge to safety. Arya didn't snap at me or treat me with her usual vitriol. For once, she was hauntingly silent. Taking advantage of the crowd's distraction, I moved toward the railing to try again. But this time, Arya shoved through the bystanders and grabbed my wrist with bruising force. Under the watchful eyes of the onlookers, she gave me no chance to resist. "The situation with Ethan isn't settled yet," she said, her voice trembling even as she tried to sound cold. "You're the prime suspect. I have a duty to keep you on guard." Her eyes were bloodshot and brimming with tears. When she realized I was watching her, she jerked her head away as if throwing a tantrum. But in that brief flash, I saw it, a flicker of genuine, agonizing heartbreak in her eyes. What does she have to be heartbroken about? I let out a self-deprecating laugh. Once, Arya was the sole heiress of the prestigious Brown family. But due to a business vendetta, she was kidnapped and discarded by her family's enemies. At that time, she was just a little girl wandering the slums, bullied by other children and chased by stray dogs. With nowhere left to go, she curled up in a dumpster at the end of an alleyway. In the sweltering heat of July, surrounded by swarming flies and insects, she preferred the stench of trash over the terrors of the dark streets. Arya huddled there like a small ball, quietly waiting to rot away alongside the rats and roaches. The only effort she ever made was calling out to me as I passed that alley after school. I took her hand and pulled her out of that filth. I bathed her and tailored my late father's old clothes for her to wear. I was only 12 then, an orphan living on meager community subsidies. Yet, I split that tiny bit of money in half for the two of us. At that time, I hadn't yet realized I was a player in a conquest game. I had no special powers. To ensure Arya had books to read and meat to eat, I spent every day after school scavenging for recyclables. On weekends, I worked as a dishwasher in a small diner. As an underage laborer, I worked in the shadows, my wages far lower than anyone else's. I had to wash 4 plates just to earn 2 cents. How many plates did I have to scrub to clean up a future for Arya and me? I didn't know. I could only repeat the motions mechanically. Pick up, rinse, scrub. In the stifling heat of that cramped kitchen, the small fan whirred fruitlessly. It could never dispel the sweltering air or the thick layers of grease that seemed permanently etched into my skin. Those things became an indelible part of my childhood memories. I once asked her, so many people walk past that alley. Why did you choose me? Back then, the little girl looked up at me with a radiant smile. She said she had watched for a long time before deciding. Out of all the passers-by, I was the only one she trusted to actually help her. That was the Arya I knew. But at 14, her biological parents took her back, and she vanished without a word. The girl who once said I was the only one she trusted eventually stood against me without hesitation, siding with the others after only a few moments of doubt. Before the eyes of the world, she had raised her voice to rebuke me, declaring how much I disappointed her and how deeply she despised me. And now, Arya was brazenly declaring that she had to supervise me on Ethan's behalf. Consequently, I couldn't find a single opening to take my own life on the way back. After witnessing me leap from that railing twice without a second thought, she finally realized that I wasn't fishing for attention. I truly, desperately wanted to die. Consequently, her attitude toward me underwent an immediate and drastic shift. On the drive back, she even attempted to counsel me with newfound patience. You've made so many mistakes in the past, she said softly. But Ethan isn't a petty man. As long as you're willing to offer a sincere apology, we can all go back to how things were before. I had no interest in her words. I kept my eyes closed, resting my mind and ignoring her entirely. It wasn't until she mentioned the name Serafina that I showed a spark of life. Seeing my reaction, the smile on Arya's lips turned even more self-deprecating. But at this point, I couldn't care less about her feelings. My mind was consumed by Serafina. Serafina, the woman who loved the protagonist to the point of madness. I realized that if I used Ethan to provoke her, there was a high probability she would kill me for his sake. After all, Serafina was my conquest target. As the obsessive and Yandere female antagonist of this novel, she came from an illustrious background. She had a powerful family, but a miserable childhood. During her youth, Ethan was the only bright color, the only salvation that had ever appeared in her life. Even after she became a formidable business tycoon capable of manipulating entire industries, having met countless people, her obsession with Ethan remained unchanged. In the original plot, after she finished clearing the path for Ethan's success and watched him achieve a happily ever after with a female lead, she chose to jump into the sea alone, ending her lonely existence. I remember the year Ethan transferred to our school in the 11th grade. That was exactly when I awakened to my identity as a player. By then, Serafina had already fallen for Ethan at first sight, all because he had once shielded a stray cat from the rain. But her love for him was as deep as it was silent. It was so profound that she was willing to accept another man, one she didn't love at all, just to keep Ethan happy. That man was me. At the time, Ethan was suffering because he mistakenly believed I was involved with the female lead, Serena. No matter how Serafina tried to comfort him, he remained unmoved. Eventually, she chose to pursue me because I was Ethan's romantic rival. By keeping me close, she felt she could indirectly keep a better eye on him. How pathetic it was that I actually believed my sincerity had finally melted the Ice Queen. I had even reported to the system with joy. As expected, as long as one is sincere, even a glacier will thaw. Glaciers do melt, but not for me. By the time Serafina returned, Arya was still standing guard over me in the living room. Her watch was so suffocatingly tight that I couldn't find a single window of opportunity. Bored and weary, I picked up a controller to play a game. But at that moment, the servant's voice echoed from the foyer. "Welcome back, Miss Sterling." In an instant, smack, the controller was struck from my hands, clattering to the floor. When I looked up, Seraphina's frigid face was inches from mine. A crushing pressure tightened around my throat, and a familiar sense of suffocation began to numb my senses. Through the haze, I could see her eyes were bloodshot. She hissed at me, "Where have you hidden Ethan?" "So, they still haven't found him?" A mocking smile tugged at the corners of my mouth. Spoken like a true protagonist. The script had been written, yet he was intentionally delaying his entrance, forcing his audience to wait in agonizing suspense before he graced the stage. My smile must have been the final straw. Seraphina's grip tightened violently. Yes, just like that, I cheered silently in my head. "Snap my neck. Kill me right here. Not only will I be free, but you'll end up behind bars. It's a win-win." But the next second, a furious roar shattered the silence. Arya charged forward, swinging a fist directly at Seraphina's face. Seraphina flinched back to avoid the blow, and her hands finally fell away from my neck. I collapsed into a pair of warm arms, Arya's arms. She pulled me up, shielding me behind her back. For the first time, she looked at the woman she had admired since childhood with pure rage. "Seraphina, you almost just killed him." Seraphina stood stunned for a moment. She looked down at her own hands, then looked back up. When her gaze drifted to me, standing silently behind Arya, the warmth vanished from her eyes, replaced by a familiar coldness. "Arya, Caleb is my fiancé," she said sharply. "What happens between us is none of your business." She stepped toward us, ignoring Arya completely, and barked an order at me. "Get over here." I didn't move. Arya, unable to take it anymore, shielded me even more fiercely. "He's your fiancé, and this is how you treat him? Who gave you the right? He kidnapped Ethan. Ethan is still missing, and we don't know if he's dead or alive." Seraphina's temper finally snapped. A vein pulsed in her pale forehead, her voice turning razor-sharp. "Arya, remember when you first returned to the Brown family? Who was it that helped you adapt? Who brought you back into this circle and made sure you weren't an outcast? Ethan has been so good to you. Don't you dare be an ungrateful wretch." Arya went silent. Whenever Ethan was mentioned, she could never easily find a retort. But this time, after a long, heavy silence, she finally spoke. "Is there any proof?" "What?" I asked if there is any actual evidence. Arya's voice rose, edged with agitation. "From beginning to end, there hasn't been a single shred of proof that Caleb did this. Why is everyone constantly targeting him?" Hearing this, I couldn't help but glance at her. So, she had known all along. But if she cared about evidence, why did she act so self-righteous before, when everyone was hurling baseless accusations at me for Ethan's sake? Hasn't he done enough to Ethan already? Seraphina's voice was hoarse with fury. Over the years, he has sabotaged Ethan countless times. He has stripped away so much from him. Everyone saw those things. Every single time, Ethan was magnanimous enough to forgive him. Isn't that enough? Arya lapsed into silence once more. As for me, listening to their bickering, I suddenly burst into laughter. Of course Ethan had to forgive me, without me as the villain. Who else would help him showcase his saintly tolerance and nobility? Just as I was growing impatient, planning to yawn and say something to provoke Seraphina into finishing me off, Arya spoke again. "I believe him." "What?" This time, I was the one who couldn't believe my ears. "I believe Caleb. I believe he is innocent." Arya repeated loudly. Seraphina stood across from us, her gaze growing deeper and more inscrutable by the second. "You'd be better off not trusting him." Standing behind Arya, I gave a faint, mocking smile. "You've convicted me so many times already. What's one more?" Having said that, I tried to brush past Arya to head straight out the door, but she clamped her hand down on my wrist, tightening her grip. I turned my head, but she didn't look at me. She stared directly at Seraphina and asked coldly, "What do you plan to do now? When does a person choose death just to prove their innocence?" "Arya, don't let him deceive you," Seraphina warned. But Arya ignored her, continuing as if talking to herself. On the way here, I kept thinking about that question. If a person is so wrong that they no longer fear death, if they are forced to use their own life just to show they are innocent, then it can only be. She paused for a moment, swallowing the lump in her throat before continuing. It can only be because that person has endured countless misunderstandings before. They've reached a point where they can no longer defend themselves, So they choose the ultimate way to prove who they are. Serafina, earlier when you just abandoned him and left, he jumped off the roof right in front of me. He truly doesn't want to live anymore. Well, bravo. Now I finally understood why Arya had been scanning me with that look all afternoon. It must have been the moment I fell, that genuine smile on my lips because I was finally going home, that she mistook for a smile of resigned relief. I noticed Serafina's knuckles trembling slightly beneath her sleeves. A flicker of agony crossed the depths of her dark eyes. I was about to speak up and cut through their delusions, but at that exact moment, Arya grabbed my hand and began pulling me toward the main gate of the Sterling estate. "They don't believe you, but this time I do," she insisted. "Caleb, come with me." No. This time, it was my turn to violently fling her hand away. Amidst Arya's stunned silence, I let out a frigid laugh. "Arya, stop pretending to be the saint. I don't believe a single word out of your mouth anymore." Looking at the situation, if I followed her, I feared I'd never find another chance to go home. On the other hand, Serafina was currently in a state of volatile fury. She was much easier to provoke. If I play my cards right, I might just achieve a perfect ending. I go home, and she goes to prison. I expected my repeated rejections to make Arya lash out, to mock me with that biting sarcasm she used to favor. Instead, she just stared at me silently, her eyes clouding over with a rising mist. "I won't let anything happen to you," she whispered. Then, she turned and left. I watched her back for a moment before turning to meet Serafina's silent gaze. "The relationship between you and her isn't half bad, is it?" Serafina's expression remained as cold as ever, but there was a storm brewing in her eyes. "It should be. After all, I'm the one who raised her," I said, finally acknowledging my past with Arya out loud for the first time. Until now, the Brown family had kept the details of Arya's years in the slums strictly hidden. No one knew how she had survived or who had been by her side during those dark years. Suddenly, the world spun. Serafina lunged at me, pinning me down against the sofa. Her hand gripped my throat again, but this time the brutality was gone. The posture was almost intimate. I widened my eyes, staring directly into hers in silence. After a long beat, she seemed to concede. She let out a soft sigh and loosened her grip. Her thumb brushed gently over the bruise on my neck, the mark she herself had just left there. Serafina's voice was soft, almost tender. "Can we please stop fighting? Just tell me where Ethan is." For a split second, I truly saw a flash of deep affection in her eyes. It was just like the gaze she used to give me when she'd chase after me with gifts. Her eyes back then had been overflowing with love. Serafina had said back then that no matter what happened in the past, as long as you live well and stay on the right path from now on, we will be happy forever. Back then, I understood perfectly that she was only pursuing me for the sake of Ethan's happiness. My heart had gone him a long time ago, but for the sake of the mission, I suppressed my humiliation and accepted the gift in her hand. The moment I took it, Serafina let out a long breath of relief, smiling broadly. Under the teasing eyes of the crowd, she even leaned in to kiss me tenderly. However, immediately after, Ethan arrived and pulled her away, claiming he didn't know how to handle a certain situation. Now, I looked at Serafina's face again and slowly let out a smile. Her eyes lit up, and her tone filled with hope. "Caleb, you have to be good. If you tell me this time, I won't pursue this any further. From now on, as long as you don't hurt Ethan anymore, we can still be happy forever." "Keep dreaming," I interrupted her instantly. "Whether it's telling you Ethan's location or living happily with you, it's all just a fantasy." I continued, "If you have guts, then kill me. Don't think I'm bluffing. Come on. If you can't take my life, you're a fool." As soon as those sharp words left my mouth, my strength failed me. My vision darkened, and I passed out. While unconscious, the system reminded me, "You must act quickly to exit this world. Time is running out." When I woke up, my mind was still hazy. A soft hand was repeatedly caressing my face, accompanied by warm breath and occasional gentle kisses. I thought it must be a hallucination. I had pursued Serafina for 7 years and lived by her side as her boyfriend for 5. Yet the number of times she had initiated a kiss could be counted on one hand. However, the hallucination became increasingly vivid. I even heard her voice, tender and helpless, whispering in my ear, "Caleb, What am I supposed to do with you? Unable to bear it any longer, I snapped my eyes open. I caught a glimpse of an emotion in Serafina's eyes that she hadn't had time to hide. For a second, I was stunned. To me, Serafina had always been cold and restrained. I had rarely seen her look like this. Sadness, choking grief, and a lingering reluctance. This chaotic mix of emotions made her look like a stranger. But that strangeness only lasted 2 seconds. Quickly, her expression hardened again. "Tell me where Ethan is," she said, her voice dropping to a low, seductive chill. She nonchalantly toyed with a syringe in her hand. Noticing my gaze fixed on it, she introduced it thoughtfully. "This is a variety only circulated among the elite. Each milliliter costs tens of millions. It can make a person experience excruciating agony for 3 minutes before they die. And when the forensic pathologist examines the body, they can only conclude it was a myocardial infarction." Hearing this, I burst into laughter. Serafina thought I had finally come to my senses. A glimmer of joy flashed in her eyes, only to be instantly replaced by pure horror. I lunged forward, seizing her hand that held the syringe, and without hesitation, I plunged the needle straight into my own neck, right in front of her. "Serafina, let me tell you a secret." In my dying moments, I stared directly into her terrified, dazed eyes and spoke slowly. "Once, I treated you well because I loved you." I know," she sobbed, trembling as she pulled me in her arms. She turned her head, screaming at the top of her lungs for someone to call a doctor. But I simply leaned against her shoulder, using the last remnants of my strength to finish my final sentence. "I loved you, but you never believed me. So now, I find you repulsive. I find you so sickening that I can no longer stand to live in the same world as you." With that, I summoned every last ounce of energy to press my hands against her chest and shove her away with all my might. I fell from her embrace. In the moment of my fall, time seemed to stretch into eternity. I could clearly see the shock and profound grief etched onto her face. "Serafina, are you truly heartbroken for me? It's over. I thought I could finally return home." Caleb. Through the haze, I heard the basement door being kicked open. It was a familiar voice, the neighbor I grew up with and the female lead of this novel, Serena. I heard her hurried footsteps and her voice, frantic to the point of breaking. "We found Ethan. It was his family's enemies who did it." "What did you say?" Serafina's voice shook. The dialogue after that grew increasingly blurred. My consciousness felt lighter and lighter. I felt my soul drifting upward. My parents were there, smiling tenderly, waiting for me ahead. Just as I reached out to embrace them, a violent force yanked me back. When I opened my eyes again, I was still in this body. Before me was the sterile white ceiling of a hospital room. "You're awake." A gentle voice spoke beside me. I turned my head and met the worried gaze of Serena. She was wearing a long white dress, her silver-rimmed glasses highlighting her elegant, refined features. She was the heroine of this story. Even without trying, she exuded an aura of purity and nobility. But at this moment, I had no mind for anything else. Only one thought remained in my head. Why am I still here? Why am I not dead? My voice didn't hide my profound disappointment. Serena, who was peeling an apple, froze mid-motion. After a long silence, she sighed and set the knife down. She pulled the blanket up to cover me and looked down with a gaze full of tenderness. "I've explained everything clearly to them," she said softly. "Serafina doesn't dare show her face here because she's consumed by shame. They were the ones who wronged you. Don't think about it anymore." She reached out to stroke my hair in a comforting gesture. "No matter what happens, you still have me." I stayed huddled under the covers, watching her. I couldn't stop a mocking smile from surfacing. "Is that so, Serena? Your boyfriend intentionally misled everyone, hinting that I was the mastermind behind everything. Don't you think you should come forward and give me a public apology?" Serena faltered. This time, she couldn't give me an immediate answer. For as long as I could remember, Serena had been my greatest protector in this world. Or at least, that's how it appeared on the surface. Before my parents in this world died in that car accident, our families were neighbors. Her parents were obsessed with their scientific research and had almost no time for their daughter. My parents, being kind-hearted people, couldn't stand to see a lonely little girl, so they often brought her home to play. Gradually, My house became her second home. She ate dinner with us almost every night. Whenever my parents bought a gift for me, they always prepared one for her too. There was even a small bed in our guest room specifically for her. On nights when she was too scared to sleep alone, she stayed with us. In return, Serena often helped me with my studies. She had inherited a brilliant mind from her parents and was a child prodigy. Under her guidance, my grades were among the best in school. It was a beautiful time, but it ended prematurely with the death of my parents. It happened on an ordinary summer night, amidst a violent thunderstorm. Suddenly, Serena's parents called mine, saying she was missing. Her teachers said she had left school as usual, but she hadn't come home and wasn't answering her phone. They were in the middle of a research breakthrough and couldn't leave, so they asked my parents to go look for her. When my parents received that call, I was leaning against the windowsill watching the storm, a nameless dread rising in my chest. My mother actually tried to persuade my father not to go, saying it was too dangerous to be out in such extreme weather. But in the end, their worry for Serena outweighed their fear of the storm. After all, she was the child they had watched grow up. And so, on that stormy night, my parents' car skidded on the slick road and plunged into the river. It wasn't until the next morning, when the sky finally cleared, that their bodies were discovered. At that same moment, Serena, who had been missing all night, finally returned. She was wearing brand new clothes, looking flustered and confused as she watched me burst into tears and race out the door after receiving the news. Later, I asked her, "Where exactly did you go that night?" She remained silent for a long time. Finally, she told me the story. That day, she had been helping a lost boy find his way home. The boy's house was located in the city's most prestigious villa district. Serena had held the boy's hand and walked a great distance before finally finding his house staff. But as she prepared to leave, the skies opened up. The thunder and lightning were so terrifying that she didn't dare walk back. At that moment, the boy she had helped showed immense generosity. He insisted she stay the night, and the next morning, his chauffeur drove her home. But by then, everything had changed. When I heard that story, my eyes were bloodshot with grief. I asked her, "If you decided not to come home, why didn't you call? You've known my parents' number by heart for years. You knew they would worry. Why didn't you say a single word?" Serena had no answer. She could only hang her head and repeat her apologies over and over. Shortly after, her parents hurriedly moved the family away. As for me, my relatives seized the house my parents left behind, and I eventually ended up drifting into the slums. It wasn't until much later, when I awakened to my true identity and became bound to the system, that I learned the full truth. It turns out the boy Serena helped that night was the protagonist, Ethan. The fated encounter between the lead couple had begun much earlier than anyone knew. While my parents were squinting through a blurred windshield in the pouring rain, calling out her name as they drove, Serena was holding Ethan's hand. He was arrogantly showing off his lavish, magnificent toy rooms to her. The young Serena was so mesmerized by the opulence of this strange new world that she forgot the time. She forgot everything. By the time she remembered, my parents were already resting forever beneath the freezing river. Because they died searching for her, my entire family was supposed to vanish from this world, leaving her to face an irreconcilable guilt alone, until, under the protagonist's tenderness, she would slowly escape the shadows of her past. But I awakened. I returned to their world. At that time, wanting to get close to the female antagonist, Serafina, I fought to pass the entrance exam for their elite high school. I never expected that Serena and I would cross paths once again. After years of separation, she still claimed the title of my older sister. The guilt weighing on her young heart caused her to show blatant favoritism toward me in front of everyone. The normally cold and distant girl seemed desperate to keep me by her side at all times to make amends. But she forgot one thing: we aren't related by blood. We aren't siblings. In her drive to atone, the intimacy she showed me blew past social boundaries. To those watching, her actions took on a completely different meaning. It was during those hazy, warm days of our youth that Ethan began to despise me. The protagonist and heroine were supposed to be confessing their love, but my presence only drove a wedge between them. Serena's excessive care for me made me look like a shameless interloper in Ethan's eyes. No matter how many times I explained myself, No matter how hard I tried to avoid her or keep my distance, it was futile. Then Ethan discovered my feelings for Serafina, viewing it as a deliberate challenge. He decided that for every glance I stole from Serena, he would take 10 or 100 times more from Serafina. Serafina loved Ethan. Ethan loved Serena. Serena was constantly chasing me to pay for her past. And I only wanted to save Serafina. We were trapped in a twisted, distorted circle of obsession. Ethan was the first one who wanted to shatter the status quo. He began weaving a web of traps and schemes, using every dirty trick to isolate me, ostracize me, and kick me out of their world. He had the entire Eden clan backing him. I had only myself, and a system that could do nothing but sigh and wonder, how did the protagonist end up like this? Eventually, I became a pariah, infamous and loathed. And he, in turn, lost the pure, eternally kind heart of a storybook hero. This time, Ethan had framed me for his kidnapping. I don't know what Serena did to make him change his testimony and admit it was the work of the Eden family's enemies. I wasn't sure how much of the truth she actually knew. So, I changed my approach. What if only one of us can survive? Ethan or me? Caleb. She whispered my name, her eyes filled with agony and helplessness. She forced a bitter smile, almost pleading with me. Don't say such foolish things anymore. Tell me what you want. I will help you get anything. Hearing that, I lay back on the bed. A mocking smirk curled on my lips. Fine then. Kill me. Serena fell silent for a few seconds before answering. That, I cannot do. Anything but that. I let out a cold laugh. Then make Ethan get on his knees and kowtow to me in apology. After all, if you don't kill me, I will definitely kill him. Caleb. Hearing me target her beloved over and over again, Serena, who was usually so detached and composed, finally snapped. She gritted her teeth, emphasizing every word. Everything Ethan did wrong, he did because of me. The person you should hate is me. An instant later, she stiffened. It was as if she realized she had let the truth slip. Her eyes widened in horror, her face turning ashen. But it was too late. Serena, so you've known all along? I looked at her with a cold, mocking smile. Inside, my heart had finally gone stone cold. Caleb. She panicked, wanted to say something, but the words choked in her throat. Try as she might, she couldn't speak. Of course she couldn't. How could she put it into words? How could she admit that every time I was framed, every time I was slandered, she knew the truth but chose to stand by and watch? I remembered the year Ethan accused me of stealing his family heirloom. I had proactively opened my backpack to prove my innocence, only for him to produce a doctored surveillance video to pin it on me. Immediately after, a group of strangers appeared out of nowhere, claiming I had dealt with them to sell the jewelry. They even forged transaction papers and hacked into the system to transfer a suspicious sum of money into my subsidy card. I had no way to clear my name. Branded a thief, I was forced to spend my high school years under the scornful gaze of everyone. And you always knew about all of it, didn't you, Serena? I laughed. I laughed and laughed until I almost cried. And Serena, my big sister from next door whose back was always so straight and proud, finally collapsed under the weight of my words. Back then, when I was labeled a villain and bullied by the entire school, every time I faced those hateful faces, I told myself, they're just being deceived. Once I reveal the truth, they'll understand. But how could I, a lone boy, stand against the entire Eden clan? There were people who could flip the world upside down with a snap of their fingers. Every time I opened my mouth to explain, a larger trap would fall on my head. I could only watch as the misunderstandings piled up, crushing me day by day. If you had just stood up back then and said one word of truth, what would have happened? They didn't believe me, but surely they would have believed you. I stared at Serena, my eyes brimming with tears, my words ringing out one by one. Her fingers trembled. She reached out, wanted to touch me, wanted to gently pat my head and comfort me, just like the old days. But I threw her hand off. Finally, I said the words. Serena, I hate you. You didn't just fail my parents, you failed me. Please, don't say any more, she whimpered, shrinking into herself. Her whole body trembled, and she began to cough violently, as if she were in physical agony. But I didn't stop. I pressed on. You want to make amends to me in front of everyone. You wanted to soothe your own guilt while simultaneously acting as Ethan's silent protector. You tried to hold on to both sides, but in the end, you protected no one. Just how unlucky am I to be dragged into the middle of your twisted love story? As soon as the words left my mouth, I stood up abruptly and delivered a stinging slap to her face. The force of it sent her reeling. Her glasses were knocked from the bridge of her nose, clattering to the floor. 5 vivid, red finger marks bloomed across her pale cheek. Her lips quivered, wanting to speak, but she couldn't find the words. Finally, this woman, once so proud and arrogant, bowed her head before me. She sank onto the cold hospital floor, her voice hoarse and broken. "It's my fault, Caleb. I'm not a good person." Tears fell drop by drop onto the tiles. She looked up at me, her gaze shattered and bordering on despair. "What do I have to do? How can I ever get you to forgive me? I'm begging you. Caleb, your parents are gone. I only want you to live a good life." Her trembling hand reached out, trying to grab the hem of my shirt. This was the manifestation of a deep-seated psychological trauma she had carried for years. Whenever she touched those forbidden memories, she would lose control, her body racked with tremors. But I only stepped back, inch by inch, looking down at her with nothing but cold indifference. I said, "Serena, I'm not a fool. I won't believe in your hollow promises of atonement ever again." With that, I turned to walk out, leaving her collapsed on the floor. Her body was convulsing violently as she gasped for air. Her face was deathly pale, yet flushed with a sickly, unnatural red. She was on the verge of suffocating, yet she still tried to call out to me as I reached the door. "Caleb," she managed a faint, ghostly smile. "Can you forgive me?" Before I could respond, a shadow lunged from the doorway and delivered a resounding slap to Serena's other cheek. It was Arya, who had been eavesdropping on the entire conversation. She threw herself onto Serena, her eyes bloodshot and streaming with tears. Her voice shook with pure, unadulterated rage. "How do you have a nerve to ask for forgiveness? Must you all drive him to his death to be satisfied? Do any of you have a conscience? How could you treat him like this?" "I'm sorry." Serena wheezed out those 3 words before blacking out. Arya rolled off her, but she didn't stop. She began striking her own face, blow after blow. "You bastards. I trusted you so much, but I treated him poorly too. I'm a monster, a complete animal." The young girl sobbed, covering her eyes with trembling hands. "Brother, I was wrong. I shouldn't have doubted you. All these years, how much suffering did you endure alone? I regret it. I truly regret it." Her wailing was so loud it finally drew the attention of the nurses and doctors. Serena was rushed to emergency care, but Arya stood her ground, refusing to leave. She looked at me, her gaze unmoving. "Caleb, please come with me. Serafina treated you like that. If you stay with her, you'll die. I'm begging you." There was a desperate plea on her youthful face, but I didn't care. When the Sterling family bodyguards arrived to collect me, I followed them without a backward glance. "Why?" Arya's voice trembled from behind me. "Why is it that ever since we met again, you only have eyes for Serafina? We were the closest ones, weren't we?" "The closest?" I repeated the words in my head, a bitter smile tugging at my lips. "When you call me a wicked, black-hearted man, you didn't seem to think we were closest. Arya, you know better than Serafina. You're all equally repulsive." I left her standing there in stunned silence. I didn't look back. I didn't know how much Serafina had learned about what happened in that hospital room, but from that day on, she stopped appearing before me. Perhaps she didn't know how to face me anymore. Or perhaps she couldn't accept the reality that the white moonlight she had idealized for so long had long since soured. Serafina avoided me entirely. Left with no other choice, I tried to end things myself. But after jumping, biting my tongue, slitting my wrists, and drowning myself in the bathtub all failed, Mother Vu called Serafina in tears. "Ma'am, please come see Master Caleb. He's falling apart." Still, Serafina did not appear. Instead, every object in the house that could potentially harm me was removed. Even the windows were sealed shut. With nothing left to do, I took to banging my head against the wall while hurling curses at the Sterling family. Serafina didn't get angry. Instead, she began dropping subtle hints to everyone in the villa that she hadn't gone to see Ethan lately. She even started bringing me food: chestnut chicken, braised ribs, stir-fried pork. Every day, A different meal appeared on my bedside table. I stubbornly threw them away. She stubbornly kept bringing them. Sometimes, I would wake up early only to catch a glimpse of her back as she hurried out of my room. The days between Serafina and me dragged on in this stalemate. The system warned me to hurry. I told it not to worry. Someone was bound to snap and take action. The first to snap was Arya. She came to the Sterling estate countless times, demanding to take me away. To achieve this, she didn't hesitate to stir up trouble with the Sterling elders. She used the threat of her own death to force them to intervene and rescue me from Serafina's grip. But Serafina was now the head of the family, and she refused to yield to anyone. With neither side backing down, the tension between the two houses became unbearable, and all pretense of civility vanished. Finally, Arya spat out cruel words directly to Serafina's face. If I hadn't been absent during the best years of his life, Caleb would never have been yours. You're nothing but a thief who picked up someone else's discarded treasure and didn't even know how to cherish it. These words finally pushed Serafina over the edge. That night, as I drifted in and out of sleep, I suddenly felt a soft, warm body pressing down on me, accompanied by the heavy scent of alcohol. When I opened my eyes, I saw Serafina's face, etched with a profound sense of grievance. I had never seen her like this. Like a deserted puppy, she gripped my hand tight and pressed it against her flushed cheek. "Hubby," she whispered, her voice trembling with self-pity. "They say I stole your love. They say I didn't cherish you. It's not that I didn't cherish you. It's just that, for a while, I didn't know how to face you. You are my wife." "You have the wrong person," I interrupted coldly. "The engagement ceremony had barely begun when you walked out. Therefore, I am not your fiancé." Serafina was visibly stung by my words. Her body stiffened, and the drunken haze in her eyes began to evaporate as she regained her clarity. Yet, she chose to keep playing the part of the drunk. She continued to nuzzle against me as if nothing had happened. "No, my Caleb loves me the most. You are the only husband I'll ever have." I looked at her with pure indifference. "Serafina, how old are you that you're still playing these games? Honestly, if you had just stubbornly stuck to loving Ethan and only him, I might have actually respected you a little." Finally, her anger flared. She grabbed a pillow and began hitting me with it. After a long moment, I looked up and met her bloodshot eyes. "Then what am I supposed to do?" she screamed, her voice heavy with despair. "When I was born, my parents only saw me as a tool. If Ethan hadn't supported me, I wouldn't have survived this long. Tell me, what was I supposed to do?" A moment later, as if finding an escape hatch for her conscience, her tone softened. "Actually, it's because of the mistakes you made in the past. Begin now. Don't be afraid. I won't blame you anymore." She gave a faint, fragile smile. I watched her agony with icy detachment. "Right. He's innocent. He's so wonderful. Then why don't you go marry him? It's not because you don't want to, is it? Serafina, do you realize how disgusting you are? You don't have the right to love anyone." I was truly blind back then. "Shut up." Something I said snapped her last thread of control. She suddenly pinned me down, her hands tightening around my throat. "You were the one who said you'd always be good to me. You were the one who said you'd stay by my side." She stared at me, her voice trembling with desperation. "What does that look in your eyes? Didn't you love me the most? Why can't I feel your love anymore?" she shrieked, her voice filled with a panic and helplessness she didn't even recognize in herself. Tears blurred her vision, but she continued to stare at me, trying to find a spark of the old love in my gaze. My face turned beet red from the lack of air, but I only gave her a cold, mocking smile. "Yes, I want you to kill me. Do it. Just finish it." Finally, just as I was on the verge of slipping away, Serafina snapped back to reality and abruptly pulled her hands back. "You're doing this on purpose. You're trying to provoke me. Do you really hate being with me so much that you'd rather die?" In that moment, her silhouette, which had always been so upright and proud, seemed to buckle, looking utterly pathetic. Serafina doubled over, coughing violently. Then, she turned her head and began to mutter to herself in a delusional, frantic tone of self-comfort. "That's not it, right? You still love me. Caleb, you're just angry with me. I'll make it up to you. I'll make you happy again." As she spoke, she lunged toward me, throwing her arms around me in a suffocating embrace. "Let's get married, okay? We'll live a good life together from now on. We won't care about anyone else just us. Her voice was choked with sobs, and her tears soaked into my shoulder. I shoved her away with all my strength and slapped her. But it wasn't enough. I grabbed the table lamp, the pillows, the water glass, everything within reach, and hurled them at her. Serafina, if you have the guts, then kill me. Stop saying these things. Stop making me suffer. I screamed at her. The glass struck her forehead. Blood began to seep out, trickling down and masking her face. Finally, she stood up in silence. She picked up her coat from the floor. When she reached the door, she let out a sudden, self-deprecating laugh. Caleb, you blame me for favoring Ethan. But are you truly so innocent? Right now, because of you, Serena has severed ties with the Eden family. Arya is focused solely on you. Do you dare to say there is nothing between you and them? You're right. I laughed loudly from behind her. They treat me so well. That's even more reason for me to abandon you and choose them. My words seemed to wound her like a physical blow. She fled the room as if trying to escape. The next morning, an unexpected visitor appeared, Ethan. According to him, Serafina had sought him out to explain their relationship to me. He wore a pristine white suit, his hair perfectly coiffed, and sat down before me with a gentle, practiced smile. But as soon as he sat, he let out a deliberate sigh of feigned hardship. Oh, Caleb, everyone knows Serafina likes me. How am I supposed to explain that? I didn't answer. I just stared blankly at the necklace around his neck. My vacant expression seemed to satisfy him. He smiled broadly. Actually, you don't need to be so depressed. Even with your reputation being as foul as it is, Serena still begged me to change my testimony for your sake. She really does cherish you. Her little brother. Having finished his sentence, he elegantly raised his glass toward me. However, his eyes couldn't hide his lingering resentment. So, as a gesture of goodwill, considering you've been so terrified and bedridden in the hospital these past few days, I even let Serafina come visit me, he continued. I heard that to keep from breaking your heart, she even went as far as ordering the servants to hide it from you. Everyone cares so much about you, don't they? Without waiting for my response, he opened his mouth again, this time bringing up someone else, Arya. When she was first brought back to the Brown family, she talked about her big brother constantly. She wanted to go back and find him, but the Browns wouldn't allow it. Back then, I told her to wait until she was mature and strong enough to meet him again, that her brother would be even happier then. Later, she finally did reunite with him, but from that moment on, she never mentioned him again. The reason is simple. She discovered that the brother she once thought was the best and kindest person in the world had turned into a deceitful man, tangled up with others. With every word Ethan spoke, his smile grew wider. His eyes didn't leave my face for a single second, eagerly waiting to witness my mental collapse. But in the end, he didn't get what he wanted. Facing his taunts, I merely smiled back. Yes, Arya is wonderful. And if she's just like Serena, developing fake products to sell to your company, that's even better. Ethan's face went cold instantly, every trace of his smile vanishing. Destroy the Eden family. Let me reclaim justice. That was the repayment I had demanded from Serena during our last encounter. Over the past few years, the Eden family had pivoted toward high-tech, investing nearly their entire fortune into this new research product. But on the day of the launch, the research data Serena gave them turned out to be for low-quality products that had been discarded decades ago. She had driven a fatal blade straight into the Eden family's main artery. Even so, the young master of the Eden clan couldn't bring himself to call the police and send his girlfriend to prison. Instead, he came to me to vent his fury. He cursed me as a vile third wheel. He accused me of stealing the Eden family's bride. Over and over, he couldn't bring himself to blame the woman he loved. I lost all patience for his lunacy. Suddenly, I hurled the cup of hot tea from the table at him. As Ethan screamed, I lunged forward, snatched the necklace from his neck, and coiled it tightly around his throat. It's Serena's change of heart that truly scares you. The problem lies with her, yet you choose to blame me? Well then, now it's time for my revenge, ha ha ha. I whispered into his ear, Ethan, you really shouldn't have treated me this way. Serafina will never let you get away with this. Even in this moment, he managed to maintain a facade of composure. But as my grip tightened and the air was slowly cut off, his eyes began to roll back, and that calm completely shattered. When Serafina arrived with her people, her eyes locked onto me immediately. For a fleeting second, I saw a flash of joy on her face. What on earth was she happy about? Was she glad that I had finally proven my guilt by attacking her precious, white moonlight? Or was she happy because she could return to her comfortable old role, standing on the moral high ground, reprimanding me for my flaws and transgressions? Serafina spoke, her expression turning incredibly dark. Caleb, everything before was just an act. You haven't changed at all, have you? I looked at her, then slowly loosened my grip. Ethan, the great young master of the Eden family, finally gasped in a lungful of air. With tears streaming down his face, he began to negotiate with me in a frantic whisper. I can help you get out of here. I don't trust you. I'm serious. You just want to prove your place in Serafina's heart. I'll help you. We can make a bet. He spoke hurriedly, as if terrified I would refuse. His face was a mess of tears like a whimpering kitten, yet he tried to force a compliant smile. I listened to the plan he whispered in my ear. Finally, I gave a soft smile, nodded, and let him go. Serafina rushed over to the trembling Ethan, preparing to take him to the hospital. Before leaving, she cast a deep, lingering look at me. I hope during this time, you think long and hard about how to apologize. Ethan certainly knew how to handle Serafina. After she brought him back from the hospital, she immediately lifted all restrictions on me. Ignoring Mother Vu's protests, she grabbed my arm and dragged me straight outside. She let out a cold laugh, her face filled with the confidence of someone who thought they had seen through everything. I played along, weeping and saying I didn't want to leave. My resistance only confirmed her suspicion that everything I had done before was just a stunt to get her attention. Her face grew darker by the second. Ethan was right. I've spoiled you too much. You truly need a lesson. At that point, I couldn't help it. I looked up and asked her softly, we've been together for so long. Have you ever believed me, even once? Serafina frowned. For a moment, she seemed to recall the past. Everything I had done for her, the care and the sincere love. But all of that still paled in comparison to a single glance shared under a rainy eaves during their youth. So that's how it is? They say if you pamper someone too much, they'll turn rotten. But play the game of catch and release too many times, and the hook eventually loses its hold. A flicker of pity crossed Serafina's face, but in the end, she said nothing more. She left me with a single, cryptic parting word before shutting the door. I wandered through the darkness, unsure of how long I had been walking, and just as I was about to reach the light, my world went black. When I opened my eyes again, Ethan and I were tied up together on the edge of a jagged cliff. Not far away, Serafina, Arya, and a team of SWAT officers stood in a tense standoff. Let him go, Serafina barked. I said, let Caleb go. Do you hear me? I heard Arya scream in desperation. She tried to lunge forward multiple times only to be forcibly held back. The captors ignored her, keeping their eyes fixed solely on Serafina. Serafina, you can only pick one. Who lives and who dies depends entirely on your choice. Serafina's face drained of color instantly. How much money do you want? I'll pay it. Just let them go. Her eyes softened as they landed on me, and she kept whispering reassurances. Don't be afraid, Caleb. It's going to be okay. We don't want money. We want Serafina to lose the two men she loves most. One of the men mocked, causing Serafina's expression to grow even darker. I saw her give a subtle signal. In the distance, a sniper was already in position. But in an instant, Ethan, who was tied beside me, let out a piercing shriek. The captors grabbed him, forcing his head out over the abyss. Once Ethan regained his composure, his eyes brimming with tears, he called out her name with a trembling voice. Serafina, Serafina, I'm so scared. The wound I had inflicted on his forehead yesterday was still bandaged. Standing there in the wind, he looked like a fragile white flower about to snap. Serafina's gaze lingered on his injury for a moment, a trace of guilt appearing in her eyes. Hold on just a little longer, she urged. The man behind Ethan yanked him back violently. Ethan stumbled, looking as if he might plummet at any second. Everyone on the scene was paralyzed with tension. The lethal intent on Serafina's face became more pronounced by the second. Ethan turned to me and flashed a profound, sinister smile. You've lost again. Aren't you afraid they'll find out you orchestrated this whole thing? I whispered. Ha. Ethan laughed under his breath. With the Eden family's resources, they'll never find out. Isn't this how we've lived all these years? He smirked, a sweet, sickening smile appearing on his lips. The men behind him pushed him even closer to the edge. Miss Sterling, if you can't decide, we'll help you make the choice. Serafina, save me. Ethan was halfway over the edge, calling her name incessantly. Tears streaked his pale, trembling face. Serafina clenched her fists until her knuckles turned white, letting out a guttural growl as she warned the captors. I will never forgive you for this. Save the nonsense. Decide. Now. A piercing shriek echoed through the air as Ethan nearly slipped off the precipice. Finally, Serafina's posture broke. She looked at me with an expression of profound agony. Caleb, she asked, her voice trembling. Is this also part of your plan? No money involved. You just wanted me to choose, didn't you? You wanted to prove who is truly the most important person in my heart, right? She spoke as if trying to deceive herself, then closed her eyes tight. I cannot let you be wrong again. Unsurprisingly, Serafina chose Ethan. In that moment, the entire world seemed to fall silent. Arya, breaking free from those holding her, lunged towards Serafina and delivered a stinging slap across her face. Meanwhile, Ethan looked at me with the smug, radiant smile of a victor. Goodbye, he mouthed, as he walked with steady, confident steps towards Serafina, the men holding me let go. Seeing this, Serafina let out a long sigh of relief. Caleb, stop using these childish games to test me. Then she fell silent, because I had proactively taken a step back, standing right on the crumbling edge of the abyss. One more inch, and I would fall. Caleb, Serafina's voice shook as she called my name. Brother, don't kill yourself over someone like her. Arya screamed. Brother, we'll live together from now on. I was wrong before. I shouldn't have let my jealousy drive me away from you. I shouldn't have handed you over to that woman. I simply shook my head gently, looking at them with eerie calmness. Serafina, Arya, this is the 101st time. What? The 101st time the two of you have abandoned me for the sake of Ethan. And yet you claim to truly love me? If there had been even one time where you chose to firmly believe in me, we wouldn't be standing here today. I watched as panic began to settle into their features, and an indescribable sense of joy welled up within me. My gaze shifted to Ethan. I don't think you know this yet, but I've left a gift for all of you. I pointed to the second button on my shirt. There's a hidden camera right here. Everything you just did and said has been live-streamed to the world. I want to go home, but I refuse to leave carrying a tarnished reputation. I've endured far too many injustices over these years. They are real, not a single lie among them. I refuse to die while people are still cursing me as a thief. I came to this world with nothing but kindness for everyone. Ethan's expression flickered with panic for a split second. Then, thinking of something, he regained his composure. After all, with the Eden family's power to suppress information, wiping my live stream would be child's play. In his mind, the video I mentioned surely hadn't aired for even a second. But in the end, he lost my smile. Panicked, he scrambled to snatch a phone for someone nearby. Online, the world was already exploding with discussions about him. The Eden heir is a fraud. National Idol caught bullying. These keywords were rapidly seizing the top trending spots. Countless users had recorded the live stream as evidence. Videos where they admitted to their actions and every malicious word uttered over the years. Seeing this, Serafina couldn't help herself. She pulled out her own phone, her face clouded with doubt. Finally, Ethan lost all control and tried to grab her phone away. But it was too late. Serafina abruptly looked up, her face deathly pale as she stared at me. It's fake. All of it is fake. Ethan shrieked, pointing at me. But then a thought struck him. He looked around frantically, finally realizing that the female lead of his planned finale was missing. His eyes snapped back to me. I didn't hesitate to enlighten him. Serena helped me. Even the hidden camera was provided by her. So, the rest of you can spend the rest of your lives in mutual resentment. Torture each other well. With that, I let myself fall backward. Before the eyes of everyone present, I plummeted into the abyss. No, painful screams erupted behind me. I couldn't tell if they came from Serafina or Arya, but I no longer had the heart to care. As I sank into the deep sea, My soul slowly drifted upward into the air. I saw Serafina collapse on her knees, her face drenched in tears. As she stared at the spot where I had vanished, she suddenly spat out a mouthful of fresh blood. Arya was frantically trying to throw herself off the cliff, held back only by her family. In the distance, another person sat silently controlling a computer to ensure the truth reached as many people as possible. On her wrist was a fresh, bright red gash, blood dripping down drop by drop. She simply turned her head toward the window, remained silent for a long time, and then softly closed her eyes. "Caleb, you must really hate me, don't you?" she whispered. "It's okay. I'll get revenge for you. I won't even spare myself. Wait until we meet again. I will definitely be good to you." Soon after, the images of my parents appeared, their faces kind and their eyes filled with parental warmth. As I was about to leave that world forever, the electronic voice of the system chimed in my head. Strong willpower detected from the targets, wishing for the host's survival. Mission complete. Rewards have been issued. When I woke up, I saw my mother joyfully clutching my hand. A miracle had happened. "Caleb, the doctor said your illness vanished completely overnight." I couldn't hold back anymore. I threw myself into my parents' arms and sobbed with them. It was wonderful. I was finally home. Epilogue. A while later, after being discharged from the hospital, I returned to school. With the support of my friends and teachers, I began my life anew. One day, the system's electronic voice rang out again. It had come back for a final check-in. Under its guidance, my soul once again visited the world of the book to witness the fates of those from my past. Serafina, after witnessing me fall into the abyss, began a frantic campaign of revenge against Ethan. She personally unearthed every truth she had once helped hide. She forced Ethan to issue a public apology to me on every social media platform. But Serafina didn't stop there. Driven by a vengeful obsession, she relentlessly dismantled the Eden family in the business world. The century-old foundation of the Eden clan was completely annihilated by her within 3 years. One rainy day, Ethan knelt outside the Sterling villa, weeping and begging for mercy, but he couldn't move her heart in the slightest. Afterward, Serafina began drinking every day, completely neglecting her company. Eventually, the Sterling family disowned her, and she was stripped of her position as chairperson. She returned alone to the place where we once studied, constantly reliving old memories. One day, she began coughing up blood, but she didn't care and kept drinking. In her drunken stupors, she would call out my name. Serafina had reached the terminal stage of stomach cancer. When I visited her, she had been unconscious in a tiny rented room for 3 days. In her state of deep regret, Serafina's soul saw me and gave a foolish, dazed smile. Her voice was soft, as if she were afraid of scaring me away. "You've changed so much. You look so happy." She reached out, wanting to stroke my cheek, but I turned away to avoid her touch. A flicker of disappointment crossed her face, and her smile turned bitter. She whispered that she was dying soon and would join me shortly to atone for her sins. I only smiled. "You'll be the only one dying, Serafina. I have been reborn in another world. From now on, I will live under the sun, surrounded by love. Only you will remain like a heap of sludge, forever rotting and decaying. We will never meet again. Even in death, we will descend into different hells." With those final words, I vanished before her eyes, leaving her collapsed and broken. Then there was the fate of Ethan and Serena. Serena, who had attempted suicide by slitting her wrists, was discovered and saved by her family just in time. However, because she had crippled the Eden family's reputation, she became the target of their brutal retaliation. Before Serafina could fully dismantle the Eden Empire, Serena became the new victim of their bullying. Every torture they once inflicted on me, Ethan applied to Serena 1,000 times over. Finally, when the Eden family collapsed, a ruined Ethan ran to Serena's house and asked if she still wanted to be with him. Serena opened the door and let him in. That very night, she set the house ablaze. Neither of them lived to see the light of the next day. As for Arya, having awakened to the reality of her own weakness after spending half her life living under the control of others, she abandoned the Brown family. She fled to a remote mountain region to become a teacher. No one heard from her again. When she encountered me in a dream, She was overjoyed. Brother, I'm just like you used to be now. I understand how to help people. Are you proud of me? But I only shook my head, my face devoid of emotion. Arya, what you do has nothing to do with me. From a moment you chose to hide your past, afraid to let anyone know you were once a girl from the slums in an elite school. You were the one who severed our bond. Our story ended a long time ago. Now I have my own life to live. She wept, reaching out to hold me back, but I turned and walked away. The wounds of the past were finally left behind. From now on, I only need to look forward.